Message from Cadena.
Read it out.
Merchant ships vulnerable. At rear of convoy, attack imminent. Request your release assistance.
Captain, survivors 500 yards starboard, sir. Proceed with rescue.
Greyhound is a dramatic war film released by Apple TV Plus on July 10th, 2020. Based on The Good Shepherd by C.S. Forrester, the film was written by Tom Hanks and was directed by Aaron Schneider. The film stars Tom Hanks, Stephen Graham, Rob Morgan, and Elizabeth Shue. Greyhound is a film that has the distinct honor of being a film released in the year 2020, and as such is able to make a bit of a name for itself among a larger-than-usual crowd of free time management enthusiasts. It is also a film that covers the oft-forgotten Battle of the Atlantic, one of the lengthiest and most costly campaigns of the Second World War. But given the sheer volume of high-quality and emotionally riveting World War II films out there, certain questions are only naturally going to arise. How does this movie stack up? And does it do its source material justice? In this review, we are setting sail in search of honor and glory, or perhaps to find whatever else might be waiting in its place. Just as a warning to those of you who haven't seen this movie yet, there are major spoilers ahead. If you wish to see this movie for yourself, without having anything spoiled for you, please click off the video now. Now, without further ado, let's get into it. The story follows the Allied ship convoy designated HX-25, a 37-ship group transporting troops and supplies across the Atlantic Ocean in February of 1942. Leading the convoy is the American destroyer under the name Greyhound, having been pulled into the war by the attack on Pearl Harbor in December of 1941. Greyhound and its commanding officer Ernest Krauss are making this journey for the first time. Greyhound, with the assistance of British destroyers Eagle and Harry and Canadian corvette Dickey, must lead the convoy through the open waters of the Atlantic known as the Black Pit, alone for 50 hours before they are in range of air support. On their first shift, Greyhound receives a communique from the lead ship of the convoy, reporting a German transmission that they suspect is from a U-boat. Greyhound gives chase while Eagle, Harry, and Dickey maintain cover of the convoy. Greyhound picks up the U-boat on their sonar, and though it tries to pass underneath them, Greyhound deploys depth charges that destroy the U-boat. As the crew begins to celebrate its first kill, they receive a distress call from one of the ships of the convoy. They have been hit and are going down. Greyhound relocates to the rear of the convoy to protect the rescue ship and locate potential targets. After completing the rescue, Greyhound receives communiques from Eagle, Harry, and Dickey, reporting a total of 6 targets circling the convoy. They anticipate that this wolf pack of U-boats will wait until nightfall to strike, when the convoy is completely blind. As the U-boats stalk the convoy, Greyhound attempts to make a move against one of the U-boats. Despite icing issues and faulty radar, Greyhound succeeds at temporarily driving them away. The first night watch is brutal for the convoy. Greyhound nearly collides with the transport ship, and is also hit by friendly fire while pursuing a U-boat, which they lose after it deploys countermeasures. The captain of the lead U-boat hails the Greyhound on their radio, taunting them as he and his wolf pack close in. By the next morning, Greyhound is nearly out of depth charges, has depleted its fuel at a critical rate, and lost 5 more ships in the convoy. Though Greyhound and Dickey succeed at sinking a U-boat on the morning shift, the Greyhound is hit by one of the U-boat's guns, killing 3 men. Service is held to bury the men at sea, and just as it comes to a close, a distress rocket is launched. Another ship in the convoy has been sunk, and the Eagle has been hit and is taking on water. By the second night watch, Eagle cannot continue, and the abandoned ship order is given. Only Greyhound, Harry, and Dickey remain to protect what is left of the convoy. Desperate and slowly running out of fuel and munitions, Greyhound breaks radio silence with the Admiralty, requesting help. The Admiralty responds, offering them an alternate rendezvous point. But by next morning, with only 2 hours left to air cover, Greyhound is set upon by 2 U-boats, closing in as the U-boat captain continues to taunt them. Greyhound is able to sink the lead U-boat, narrowly avoiding 2 torpedoes while doing so. As the second U-boat lines up for another shot, air support arrives, deploying anti-submarine charges and destroying the second U-boat. In the final moments of the movie, Greyhound is relieved by a British destroyer group who orders Greyhound, Harry, and Dickie to change course for the shipyards to make repairs. The surviving ships of the convoy launch flares and cheer in gratitude as Greyhound departs. Krauss, having been at the helm of Greyhound for the entire crossing, retires to his cabin, and after a quick prayer, lies down for a much-needed rest. Perhaps one of the most striking things on display in this movie is an air of honesty. Whereas many films in the genre are guilty of trying to push an honor and glory approach to the nature of warfare, this movie focuses on giving a more grounded, and in some ways, realistic approach to what it hopes to portray. The atmosphere of this movie is definitely its strongest point. The overall feeling of desperation within the convoy sets in the very minute the plane escort leaves at the beginning, and it doesn't let up until the final moments when the escort group is relieved. As we follow the crew of the Greyhound, we feel the importance of every action they take, because the further along they go, the more catastrophic the consequences of mistakes become. The decision-making process is consistently wrought with problems arising from 2 major recurring decisions. Stay with the convoy and allow the U-boats to rout and encircle you, or pursue the U-boats and leave the convoy exposed. Other decisions, such as taking a rearguard position to protect the convoy, or rescuing the survivors of a sinking ship, lumps even more struggles on the crew's shoulders. Combine this with a growing sense of fatigue amongst the crew, specifically Commander Krauss, and the diligent and steadfast defense you see at the start of the film slowly transforms into a desperate limp to the finish line. Now, ordinarily, a person would think the typical approach to naval combat in an action movie would be to throw as much fire across the water as humanly possible in a might-makes-right maneuver. And while this movie still has its fair share of that, it opts for a more conservative and perhaps more honest approach to its action scenes. You constantly hear communications regarding the amount of ammunition and fuel being used, and various issues such as faulty radar readings and ice on the portholes. These problems only become more pronounced with time, and as a result, the movie draws so much more tension from the moments leading up to the crew firing, because if they fire at the wrong moment in the wrong place, the results can be far more devastating than just depleted resources and a runaway submarine. This is put on full display when the Greyhound nearly collides with a friendly transport ship in the dead of the night, and when an excited machine gunner opens fire on a U-boat right next to their friendly tanker, which results in the Greyhound being hit by friendly return fire. We also see this on display when Greyhound rides beside a U-boat straddling the Dickie. As they wait to line up for a shot, the U-boat opens fire on them, leading to the deaths of several of Greyhound's crew. Couple all this with the fact the escorts have to protect nearly 40 ships from an enemy that not only outnumbers them, but operates completely out of sight, and you have an itching air of impatience in that both the audience and the crew want nothing more than to introduce these U-boats to Davy Jones and Jack Dawson, but are unable to see it through until exactly the right moment. The visuals of the movie are breathtaking in a way you don't usually get with a typical high seas action movie. While most of the scenes take place on the deck or bridge of Greyhound, the binocular views offer not only a sense of how rough and cruel the ocean ahead is, but just how much space the Greyhound needs to cover and protect almost entirely on its own. The overhead and wide landscape shots of the convoy create an absolutely massive sense of scale, one that is more than suitable for a movie pitting a small group of ships against what might as well be the entire Atlantic Ocean, some torpedoes included. The distress rockets and the flames of burning ships during the night sequences not only provide you with some captivating lighting, but also double as the means for tension to be built and for people to get their asses in gear. The crown jewel of the visuals of this movie, though, comes during the U-boat's night raid against the convoy. As the Greyhound begins organizing the other destroyers of the escort, we see all the ships maneuvering and opening fire. The camera pans out far above the gunfire and explosions below, and just as we begin to get a sense of the utter devastation and desperation unfolding below, the camera breaks through the clouds, capturing a view of the northern lights shimmering above, quiet and unaware of the horrors unfolding below. Never minding the contrast of the serenity of the skies to the chaos of the ocean, it really is just a breathtaking shot all of its own. As far as dialogue and acting are concerned, they are present. It's not exactly the most memorable, and while the dialogue does a good job of setting scenes and building atmosphere, it doesn't really stand out in any heart-stopping or mind-blowing ways. You can always rely on Tom Hanks to give a role his best, and in the role that he himself wrote, this is certainly no exception. But it's not exactly a career-defining highlight either. His character is there to do his job, as is every other actor in this movie, and while they try to give him a romantic interest to make him more relatable, the subplot falls flat because it doesn't really add anything to the final product. The only other noteworthy performance comes from the captain of the head U-boat, though I don't think it's for the right reasons. He occasionally worms his way onto the Allied radio channels, taunting the crew with threats of death and howling into the microphone so loud that I was surprised that Free Willy didn't accidentally show up to the party. The borderline psychosis of the enemy sub-captain, feeling the need to chirp at the crews of the escorts, kind of kills the tension of fighting an unseen enemy. And even considering Germany's track record in that particular war, it just isn't a good look. One notable gripe comes with the end of the movie, just before the Greyhound and the convoy reach air cover. As previously stated, the film goes to great lengths to remind you of the rather calculated nature of conserving resources and providing the best possible defense under the strictest of circumstances. Well, the final confrontation kinda just throws all that shit out the window, as the Greyhound completely abandons the convoy to take on not one, but two U-boats with no backup. The behavior of the U-boats doesn't really check out either, as they seem to completely forget their goal of inflicting damage to the supply and troop transports in favor of gunning for a lone destroyer. Yes, they're obviously just trying to insert some action and tension in order to have a proper climax, which admittedly is quite invigorating to watch. And yes, arguments can be made to prove that the actions taken were in fact sound in their own way. But compared to the rest of the movie, it just feels a little bit too hasty to work as well as they'd hoped. But hey, it all worked out in the end. And these untrained eyes are also untrained in the art of naval warfare, so until further notice, I'll allow it. The final rating for this transatlantic cruise is 7 out of 10. Though it's fairly by the numbers with its story and its acting, it has the visual style to grab your attention, and the atmosphere and action scenes needed to hold it. It likely isn't the best war movie you're ever going to see, but if you have interest in World War II, or just need some pointers on how to get the ice off your windshield properly, give Greyhound your time. You won't regret it. And that will be it for today. Thank you all for stopping by. If for whatever reason you enjoyed what you saw today, consider sticking around, maybe leaving a like or subscribing if you wish. And if you have any recommendations for movies you want to see reviewed in the future, be sure to drop those down in the comments. There's plenty more to come, so if that's something you care about, I'll see you when I see you.